Hi everybody, welcome to our Eczema 101. Tonight we're just going to be covering some basics on eczema and kind of some things you can look for as to what could be causing your child's symptoms. So many kids these days have skin issues and skin conditions, and adults do too, but we're going to focus on, kind of a kid talk tonight. With eczema, it can start at a very young age. We see anywhere from, those first couple months of life, and then suddenly children can develop eczema, a few years into life, teenage years, like I said, even adults. And usually there's a trigger. And so there's many ways that our body can kind of wreak havoc. And most of the common things that we see are like chemical irritants, leaky gut, food allergies, food sensitivities, and the struggle is that every day we are dealing with an exposure to a chemical, whether it's an environmental toxin, something in the air, a pollen. There's, even from the clothes that you buy at the store, not everybody washes those before you put them on. So things like that can definitely come into contact with our skin can definitely cause, lots of issues. So tonight we're just going to focus on some root causes of eczema, looking at it from like the inside out, and then talk about just some common things that we can do to help eliminate some of the symptoms. And I'm not going to get into a whole lot of treatment options, only because a lot of it is really individually based. Every kid that we see that we're dealing with chronic eczema issues or new eczema issues, we really put the time in to focus on what is going on. So we take a thorough H&P or a history and physical. We check out your child. We get everything from birth history, vaginal or C-section deliveries, medications that they may have been on, breastfed, bottle fed, what kind of formula, the kind of diet that mom followed, if there was any stressors, involved. We've had kids that have had a somewhat, perfect, and then, big stressors came around, a death in the family or a big divorce. And, these stressors can cause such an immune challenge on these kiddos. And even that inflammation can worsen eczema and cause many issues after that. So we're just going to talk about a few things, and then I'll be available to kind of answer any questions. And then, like I said, if you're, looking to address your child's eczema, then we could definitely schedule an appointment and go more in detail in terms of what all that would entail, and how we can go about coming up with an individualized plan for your child. So I think the biggest thing with skin conditions is that not always is the child completely bothered by them, but as parents, we are. So when you're seeing your child either itching or red, excoriated skin, or skin that's not soft anymore, there's bumps everywhere, it's frustrating because you want, your child to be healthy. And that if you're seeing, eczema issues, there's something on the inside that's just not right. So as a parent, we have to try to figure out what's going on. And as a provider, that is my goal. I'm not just going to give you hydrocortisone cream and tell you to use that. That is the biggest treatment from, most conventional providers, dermatologists. And it's not even just hydrocortisone cream. It's, other ointments and other creams that still contain a steroid base. And the issue with that is that when you're constantly putting that on your skin, it actually causes what we call atrophy of the skin or thinning of the layer. So you'll not get that back. It's not just going to regrow in a child or a person. So I had a kiddo a couple years ago that came to me after being treated from a dermatologist for many years. And literally you could see like the veins through his hands because the hands were so bad, and mom was just told to put, hydrocortisone cream on twice a day. And he was on it for months and months and months. And that's such a problem that we see, and you don't think anything of it or the damage that it's causing, and you think that you're just being guided, by your provider, and you're doing what they're told. But that's why I'm here, is to kind of educate you that, maybe there's something else that you could be doing that's not harming your child. So from the inside out, we're looking at more like chronic inflammation, immune system stress, and one of the bigger things that we're seeing now these days are food sensitivities. So Dairy and gluten are big culprits for food sensitivities just due to the components within them and the proteins that it takes for our bodies to break them down. Within our gut and within our body, if we're not having, like we don't have healthy enzymes, we don't have a healthy digestive tract, we're not going to have those proteins to help break down the casein and break down the particles in the gluten. And most of the time, I mean, gluten has changed so much over the years with the chemicals they're putting in the wheats, and the fact that everything is basically with the wind, everything's just spread through. I mean, organic fields and farms have to be within so many miles of another, farm that has vegetables or product or whatever the case may be, because of that wind that blows all those chemicals to the other stuff. So everything's just kind of being, changed, and it's really causing havoc on our immune system. So, and there's so many other options. And so when I had a kid recently who was covered, head to toe eczema, kind of a sudden onset, and what happened was we did a food allergy panel, and the environmental allergies that came back on this child, from dust mites to molds outside, which is a lot of what we're seeing right now, and a lot of people's allergies are exacerbated, with the hot and the rain and all of that. These lead to immune system challenges, which leads to our skin to completely just take that toll. Symptoms can be, very mild. Symptoms can be, they can show up instantly, and they can show up 10 years later, and they can last a long time. So with this kid, it was more of a sudden onset, and mom's like, something's wrong. Like, how is he suddenly allergic to something? Well, he's not suddenly allergic to something. It's just now it's decided to show its ugly face and leak out through the skin. So a lot of this is coming from our gut, and our gut challenges is a lot what we're dealing with: chronic antibiotic use, chronic steroid use, or whatever the case may be. And when our gut becomes leaky, all those chemicals leak out through our tight junctions that are supposed to be nice and solid. They definitely, move apart. And then everything leaks through the bloodstream, which now is telling our bodies like, hey, these are foreign substances. Let's attack them and treat them like they're normal. So now we develop food sensitivities and food allergies, and it just continues to get worse and worse and worse until we can heal that barrier and treat those allergies. Now, some people can just, do a gut regimen and do a lot better with that, but there's some that takes, a lot of treatment involved. And so we have dozens and dozens of patients on our sublingual immunotherapy allergy drops that basically we do an allergy panel, we find out what the triggers are, and then we prescribe a solution that is custom made to you or your child, where they do sublingual therapy under their tongue 3 times a day. And then we recheck the labs in 6 months, and we see how much progress we've made. And if we have these triggers that are wreaking havoc on the immune system or on our system in general, then our body is not going to thrive, and we're going to have these eczema symptoms and leaky gut symptoms and whatever the case may be. The inflammation is just so important. And that's the #1 cause of eczema, is inflammation. So we need to be sure that we're finding the root cause. Does this mean that, we have eczema and we do an allergy test and everything's going to come back? No, we may do one, and it may be a normal allergy test, and that's okay. But that may not be your trigger. So it's digging a little bit deeper to figuring out what is it. When we talk about leaky gut, we talk about intestinal permeability, or like I said, the way that those junctions are fitting tightly in there. And so our body's made very intelligent by design. So our gut is born leaky, and it stays that way for about 4 to 6 months, which is why the whole concept with solids and not introducing solids early and all of that comes into play, because the body wants, intelligently wants us to take in the antibodies from mom's breast milk and help to build our immune system up. And then once it's got a good solid foundation, it closes up, we start solids and go from there. So what happens when our first foods are grains or rice cereal? That's just toxic to our gut. It's not giving us any nutritional value. It's causing more damage on the gut. It's having it work really hard. Our gut doesn't even start to produce an enzyme called amylase until our 1-year molars come in, 100%. So it starts about 6 months, and then it's fully kind of developed around that age of 1, where that helps to break down the grains. So how are we giving a baby their first food of rice cereal at 4 to 6 months? We're just setting them up for failure. So a lot of this comes into play in terms of when we're doing our H&P and we're seeing, okay, well, did we start with rice cereal? Was there a lot of grains given? Are we having just a reaction to that concept? And it's not just this new found, like everybody's got a grain issue or a gluten sensitivity. It's really just basic 101 when we look back at like how the body's made and what these enzymes and proteins actually are for and what they do. So with the intestines being open, you know, and we're kind of spreading out those junctions, these toxins and these viruses and these food particles escape into the bloodstream. So now these food particles are into the bloodstream and the body's like, whoa, you're not supposed to be here. We need to start attacking you and we're going to make us sensitive to you, which is what happens. And like I said, those dairy and gluten proteins are the hardest thing to break down, and it's the hardest on our bodies. And it's just something that, again, it's some people can tolerate just fine. But like for me, for instance, I had some triggers that definitely led to some inflammation and right after I had my daughter. And then when I got pregnant again, it kind of all went away because my body was very protective and it wanted to protect my baby. So after I had my son, it got 1,000 times worse. And I was miserably sick all the time. And I ended up having these gluten allergies and all these food tests and sensitivity tests came back. And I just couldn't figure out why suddenly. Well, when I kind of looked back and I did a history on myself and figured out what triggered those issues, it really made sense. And so it's taken me a long time to heal my gut, but I'm still 100% gluten and dairy free. And it's just something that has made me healthier, and it's made me realize that that's just the struggle. Well, when I was pregnant with my son, all of that passed through as well because we share the same blood supply. So he ended up having a lot of my gluten issues and he can't tolerate gluten either. So again, it's just kind of working on him and making him the healthiest as we can. But now he's developing a little bit of the environmental allergies and the sneezing. So we're getting him on the sublingual immunotherapy, and we're going to allow the body to recognize this is something that we can desensitize against, because to live at an age where you have to deal with allergies is really just not okay. It's not fun. And, I used to be on Zyrtec and Singulair and Qvar, and I was on so many things for so many years, and I was just done with being on medication. And I can happily say after doing the sublingual immunotherapy that I'm on nothing. And I still take it. And, it's just my body, the older you are, the harder it is, which is why I say that if we can address kids' concerns or issues young, that's only a few years of damage versus 30 years of damage where we have to reverse a lot of these roles and figure out what to do. So again, the immune system tags all the particles as foreign invaders, and it goes into an attack mode, and we need to stop that. So we need to really pay attention to, again, what's causing it. Are we dealing with food issues? Or are we dealing with more leaky gut issues? And then it's more, okay, what caused our leaky gut, which is really important to discuss. So some people have gut infections like Candida, which is a buildup of yeast overgrowth, or SIBO, is some people would understand it as small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And there's some things that we can talk about with gut disruption in the office with that, and different testing, stool testings and whatnot to determine what the root cause of that is. I work really closely with a lot of functional medicine providers locally to help treat these people together, because as providers we need to make sure that we're really delegating out our tasks as much as we can or need to, so that we don't take on too much at once. The human body is very complex, and for one person to say that they know it all, it's not true. So we need to make sure that we're really delegating those tasks out. And so a lot of my gut infections I refer out, but again, we rule that out in the process and we get a good H&P and we figure out exactly what is going on with all of that. Alrighty. Nutrient deficiencies. That is a big key role in immune function. So what happens if we're like severely vitamin D deficient or severely vitamin B12 deficient? Our body needs those vitamins to survive. So it's a big key component to our immune system. And so when we're drawing labs, we can look at the vitamin panels, we can look at our supplementation and figure out what we need. I'm not a provider that's just going to say you need this dose. I can tell you that yes, we can probably take vitamin D because most of us are deficient, but in kids, I don't give a dose until I get those lab results back, because it's really important to make sure that we're making an individualized plan for each person. Vitamin A is also another key component for immune function, and it plays a big role in skin repair and turnover of the cells. And lower levels of vitamin A have been linked to eczema. And everybody's like, oh, well, I get vitamins. My kids eat lots of fruits and vegetables, or they have smoothies. I mean, truly, adds up over time. So if we're constantly in this havoc in our body, our immune system is just going to deplete and deplete and deplete and deplete until we hit rock bottom. And then you're sick as heck, or you're covered completely in eczema, or whatever the case may be. So we need to make sure that we stay on top of it and, take the good amounts. I always talk about, regulations and stuff, and regulated vitamin D over the counter is 400 units. This is just an example of the differences with dosing and regulation. So 400 units is the dosing, where most of us are so significantly depleted and need to take on the utmost of 5,000 to 10,000 units a day. When you go to somewhere conventionally and they kind of look at you like, oh my gosh, you take that much vitamin D, you need to stop, it's toxic. And truly, over the last 7 years, I have seen one person with a vitamin D in the 90s. And other than that, everybody is usually 70 or lower. And to be a good optimal range, we like about 60 or 70 per functional medicine route. And it's just so important to make sure that we're really just functioning as optimal as we can. And these ranges are so ridiculous with that like a B12 level on a lab range is like 200 to 1100. So, you get your labs drawn and everybody's like, oh, my labs were fine. My doctor said my labs were fine, but your B12 is 300. And optimally, we need to be about 700 to 800 to function properly. So this just goes to show that we really need to make sure we're finding the right person to evaluate our labs and evaluate our symptoms and our root cause of illness, so that we can get a better answer and know that we either keep digging, or we can kind of plateau and enjoy the life where we don't have many symptoms to deal with anymore. So one of the biggest things next to food sensitivities and food allergies are the chemicals and environmental toxins. And I know I mentioned a little bit about this, but we're surrounded by so many chemicals and toxins that are really out of our control. But a lot of things can exacerbate that. So right now I'm seeing a lot of kiddos with hand eczema and like on their arms. And so if anybody could guess why suddenly these kids are leading to eczema on their hands or their arms, it would be because they're using different soaps and lotions and hand sanitizers at school. So a lot of parents live these, healthy lives where there are no chemicals at home, or they're using, proper soaps and lotions and whatever the case may be. And then they're going to school and they're using these antibacterial wipes and antibacterial soaps and these lotions, and it's really drying out and irritating their skin because it's more of a chemical reaction. So the skin is like, oh my gosh, this is not okay. I don't like any of this. The body doesn't know how to deal with it. So what is it going to do? It's going to flare up, and you're going to start to develop dry hands and cracked and itchy and eczema patches. I've wrote several notes for kids to not be able to use the soaps and lotions at school, and parents have to provide their own, because it's not worth their body to go through these entire challenges when it's completely not their fault, and it's not completely out of their control either. So again, it's just looking into what the cause of that is. A few of the lists that I kind of made that can exacerbate eczema, besides just hand soaps and whatnot. So we have household cleaners. So even if it's in the air, you're spraying it on your kitchen table or your countertop and your child's in the room, those particles release into the air. So, your child touches the wet table or whatever the case is and touches something else, those irritants are can cause some problems. Laundry detergents is huge. I worked with a kid a few months ago who suddenly just had this outbreak of eczema. And we sat and we worked so hard. And I remember we asked mom up and down, we're like, are you using a natural laundry detergent? What is it? She's like, all free and clear. That's got nothing in it, whatever the case may be. Digging deeper, there was a small chemical that was in these laundry detergents that actually was known to be a chemical irritant for the skin and cause eczema symptoms. So she found this with deep research, because you guys know that moms don't give up, and you will dig and dig and dig until you find the answer. And she stopped in my office the next day and she's like, oh my gosh, I have to share this with you. And there's actually like an entire group to ban this chemical out of products in the United States. That still hasn't happened. But she's like, I figured it out. So she removed the chemical, and within days, this kid cleared up so well and did great. And, he was on steroids at one point because it was so bad. He was so itchy that he was bleeding. And, there was just so many things that were exacerbated from one chemical that was in a laundry detergent. So making sure that you're really paying attention to that. Soaps, conditioners, fragrances, perfumes, all the kids are playing with makeup now. Little girls, they get little makeup sets or they get little chapstick sets, and all of that stuff is just full of garbage. My daughter just turned 6 on Saturday, and she wanted a little makeup kit, and we got her an organic makeup kit that had like 4 products in it, and it was like $25 for 4 little itty bitty things. But to me, it was worth it, because if she's going to play and she's going to put that stuff on her face, and here I'm trying to do everything that I can to keep her healthy and to keep this stuff, I don't need to put all this garbage that's full of dyes and all these crazy chemicals on her. So again, just paying attention to the chapsticks and the lotions and all those little smelly fragrance good things that are really more of a problem than a benefit. So and then, like I said, antibacterial stuff, even things like baby wipes. A lot of kids will get a lot of irritation in the genital area, and they're putting these fragrances in baby wipes so that you can smell good, and you kind of get that sense of thinking that your child smells fresh when really it's just causing problems. So I usually recommend, I know Water Wipes started adding a chemical to their wipes, and so it's kind of unfortunate that happened, because that was my favorite wipe brand, and luckily we're not doing wipes anymore, so I've gotten lucky there. But there's a lot of natural wipe brands out there that are more free and clear and not having any stuff added to them. Alrighty. And the last thing that is a big trigger for eczema for sure is stress. So stress in itself is just, like I said, very high inflammatory, and we all know that we feel worse in times of stress. And it can worsen eczema symptoms. It can cause immunosuppression. You can be very vulnerable with gut infections like Candida or SIBO, or trigger leaky gut issues. And it's this whole vicious cycle. So like I said, a lot of kids will come in and they have a flare, and parents are like, but I'm following the diet and I'm doing our supplements and we're doing really good and we have no chemicals. And I'm like, okay, did anything happen within the family? Like, did anything happen at school? A lot of these kids just started school, and they're under, just like parents are under a lot of stress getting everything into routine. They feel it too. So do they have a ton of homework? Are they getting ready for a play? Are they anxious about, whatever the case may be? You have to dig into that. Like, what are these stressors? So you can remove everything. It's like a claw. If you were to remove, you got 5 pieces here, and you remove every trigger, but you still have stress involved, it's still going to eat away at the skin. So you need to be sure that, you're finding every single thing that could be causing the eczema symptoms, so that you can put an end to that entire vicious inflammatory cycle. And that's why, it's why I'm different. That's why we're here. We want to figure out exactly what the issue is. And there's a couple kids, don't get me wrong, that we could not figure it out. And we did test upon test and functional medicine test upon functional medicine test and different blood tests and stool studies and diets and supplements and you name it, we did it. And we know where to refer to when we can't figure it out or when we need help. There's some awesome eczema institutes in Chicago that follow more of a natural approach that we work with, and they do a fabulous job. And I just saw a kiddo the other day that went to them, and he's completely clear and looks amazing, and it's still in the beginning part of his healing journey, but there's not just one thing. And so I'm the first to admit that, like, if we can't figure it out, if we need help in that aspect because the human body is so complex, we're going to refer you to the right place, and we're going to make sure that your child or you are taken care of, and we're going to work together with that team. We'll talk with those specialists, and we'll make sure that we're all on the same page to figure out the best plan of care for your child. So addressing the problem is obviously what we're here for, like I said. And so if it's going to be vitamin D, if it's going to be, reducing the inflammation and then adding supplements like a good dose of an omega or a cod liver oil, that's going to help reduce the inner inflammation as well. Eliminating sugar, eliminating the chemicals and the pesticides and the food dyes. When you look at a product on the shelf, you shouldn't see 25 ingredients and 20 of them you can't pronounce. That should be a red flag in your head. That should, be like, whoa, what are we putting in our bodies? If all this food is processed and made in a factory and made from chemicals, but yet we're putting it inside, how can our body deal with that? That's a big problem. And so I see so many people think, just because it's organic or because it's non-GMO that it's okay. And yes, to an extent it is. I mean, there's some really awesome granola bars like the RX bars or the Kind bars. There's the Made Good granola bites that are awesome, and they're all organic, and they have like 4 ingredients. So while it's still processed or made in a factory, you have to be smart with what you're getting. And you have to read the ingredients and be sure. And not every parent has the time to make these things from scratch at home. So that's where, I always say, try to shop the outside of your grocery store and try to stay away from everything in the middle. But the reality is that that's not always the case. So like Fresh Thyme in Crystal Lake is an awesome store to go to and just kind of check out what they have and what you can buy there to put your child's lunch or whatever the case is, in terms of like, a healthy granola bar or a healthy snack. But just looking in your cabinet and avoiding the goldfish and whatever else, Lucky Charms and Tricks and all these things that are, full of dyes and chemicals. Our bodies can't process that. It's a toxin. So if it's not going to cause eczema issues, it's going to wreak havoc on our liver. It's going to wreak havoc on our gut eventually, and it's going to lead to disease in the future. There's tons of stuff right now about how cancer is just, it grows and it thrives and it wants sugar. So, you're supposed to be completely alkaline and you're supposed to avoid all sugars and all of that. It's just going to feed and it's going to feed and it's going to feed the disease and it's going to spread like crazy. So it's the same for anything else that we're going through. It doesn't have to be cancer. It can be any sort of illness. So parents will say, well, my child's so healthy, but we're covered head to toe in eczema or whatever the case may be. And it's something that we really have to just pay attention to. I think I froze there. Sorry for anybody. At least I froze on my end. Alrighty. So yes, avoiding, the sugars and the pesticides and all that stuff, really, really important. Topically, there's not a one size fits all for this either. So like hydrocortisone cream and all of that really needs to be avoided. Is there cases that, we see kids and it's so exacerbated on the verge of getting infected because they're scratching so bad that we're like, what, maybe we need to consider a couple doses or a couple days. These things happen and that's okay. But then we're following it up with like an herbal salve, and we can, there's a really awesome one. It's called the Golden Salve, and that has worked really well for a lot of patients. It's not too oily, and it's made from all sorts of different herbs, marshmallow roots, and I think it was like a yellow dock and all sorts of different stuff that really helps to soothe the skin and not make it so itchy. Things like Epsom salt baths, baking soda baths, oatmeal baths even can help. A colloidal oatmeal lotion is one of the awesome things you can put on their skin. And then you have some kids that completely exacerbate no matter what you do. And I say, don't put anything. You're trying coconut oil and they're still flaring up. Maybe their body doesn't like the coconut oil. While coconut oil is a great, I would say a one size fits all for most, that's really not. There's some kids that really do get worse with coconut oil, so we really have to kind of pay attention to that. So, there's different essential oils we can try. And again, we have to be sure that the skin doesn't get infected. These kids really exacerbate and excoriate their skin, and easy access for a staph infection, especially when we're playing with other kiddos or we're at school, or in bacterial infections and MRSA and all sorts of stuff. So we need to be smart in that aspect too. And even though we're really focusing on natural treatments, we need to make sure that we're focusing on the healthy part of the skin as well. Alrighty, so I wanted to talk really quick about C-section and vaginal deliveries, and we're seeing a lot more of this over the last few years, where there's been a lot more elective C-sections. And I'm not talking down on C-sections. They happen, and we want a healthy baby and a healthy mama, and we're all about that. So when we have a C-section baby, we do talk about some gut flora and some gut health and how we can help build that up. When they don't go through that vaginal canal, they're not exposed to the vaginal bacteria. So, that bacteria goes in through the eyes and the mouth and the nose. When we're doing that, when we're just taking the baby out, they're not getting that exposure. So there's a lot of providers now and OBs that are talking about doing like vaginal seeding and kind of just making sure that bacteria is being exposed. And then there's a lot of articles and doctors out there that say, oh my gosh, that we don't do that. That doesn't exist. That's against regulation. So I always say to each their own. And to each their own physician, and to each their own obstetrician, and to each their own as a patient. You guys can choose to do what you want, but for those who are potentially having C-sections, I would definitely look into vaginal seeding and how that can benefit your child, and or doing more of a infectious bacteria. I'm like totally it's 9:30 and I'm like already checking out. The impetus bacteria that we're missing within that gut, and how to kind of supplement that to make sure that we're not flaring up or giving the baby the most optimal environment to grow up in. Alrighty, so that is all I have written out. I wanted to kind of leave it open for any questions if anybody has anything as I review all the way back here to see if anybody said anything. There's lots of people watching. Thanks, everybody. Anybody have any questions? Cool. I think, like I said, the biggest thing is just realizing that you're not alone, number one, and that your child is not a one-size-fits-all. And there's always a time and a place to consult with a specialist or a dermatologist regarding any skin issues. But I know just from experience that the number one treatment when you go in through most dermatology offices is just, here's some hydrocortisone. Here's a 3-day oral steroid. Here you go. We're not focusing on these triggers. So to recap, we're looking at about six main triggers that we talk about: food sensitivities and food allergies, leaky gut issues, gut infections, nutrient deficiencies, chemicals and environmental toxins, and then stressors. And like I did my little finger analogy, we only got 5 fingers, well, most of us. So when you're dealing with all this, you have to focus on all 5 of those things. And so if you still have one thing left and it's still itching away at the skin, you're not going to have any benefit. You're not going to have any success in treating your condition. So it's really just making sure everything's addressed as a whole. Allie, the salve is Golden Salve. Golden Salve. It's amazing. It smells good too. A good multi that I recommend is Animal Parade. Animal Parade Gold is actually my favorite. It's got a little bit of a digestive enzyme and probiotic in there, which of course we do need a little bit more for supplementation in that aspect, but Animal Parade is the one I recommend. Kids is definitely on an individualized basis. If I have a kiddo that's eating very, very healthy regularly and they're doing lots of fruits and vegetables and all of that stuff, doing a multivitamin is not going to be as much of a benefit, as a lot of it does get excreted out that way. But usually about after age 2, we all have a kid that is on 100% all the time. And so that multivitamin is a good one. And then adults, I do feel like we definitely need to be on them on a regular, because most of us are not as healthy as we want to be. So that's just reality there. Laundry detergent. We talked about this a couple weeks ago in a post. And my favorite laundry detergent is, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Oh, Molly's Suds. It's the Molly's Suds powder, and it is on Amazon, and it is cheap. One bag is 120 loads, and it's 1 scoop of powder. It's HE efficient, all that stuff. And a mom actually invented that because she had some miscarriages, and just the chemical burden on her body was just so much. So she wanted to be sure that this was something that was not going to cause any issues. And so she came up with this product, and it is fabulous. So Molly's Suds, and it is on Amazon. Delivered to your door in 2 days. How convenient is that? All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We've been talking for 33 minutes. It's time to go to bed. Happy Monday. If anybody has any other questions, post them below, and I can definitely touch base with you. If you're wanting to schedule an appointment, please call the office. We can definitely make sure that we get you in and do a nice H&P and just come with an individualized plan for your child, and just make sure that they're functioning optimally and to the best that they can. So thanks for tuning in, and have a great night. Bye-bye.